Hi everybody, today we're going to take a look at another presidential political shift. This time we've got 1972 to 2020. So let's get right into this. A little bit of background about 1972. That was the Nixon landslide. He carried 49 states, over 60% of the popular vote, 520 electoral votes. His opponent, George McGovern, he only got 37.5% of the popular vote. He was only able to carry one state plus DC, 17 electoral votes. It was a complete blowout. It's very hard to imagine anything close to this happening today, but we're going to see the shifts from this to the recent election in 2020. Everybody remembers that one. It was technically a very close election. Just a small margin in a few states determined the outcome. But one thing that's going to be clear is that there's going to be a ton of massive blue shifts on here, going from an extreme high point for the Republicans to a much lower point for the Republicans. Naturally, we're going to see very little red. So here's the usual spreadsheet. We've got the states in the first column, the 1972 Democratic vote. That's George McGovern. The 72 Republican vote, Richard Nixon. Jump ahead, we've got the 2020 Democratic vote, Joe Biden. 2020 Republican vote, Donald Trump. The next column are the Democratic shifts between those two elections, followed by the Republican shifts. And the last column, that's the net change between the two parties between the two elections. And I also have shading. The darkest colors, those are 10 or more point shifts. We're going to see a ton of those. The lightest colors are going to be under 5-point shifts. The middle colors are 5 to 9.9. So let's go through this. First is Alabama, 1972. George McGovern got 25.5% of the vote. Richard Nixon got 72.4. Jump ahead, Joe Biden, he got 36.6. Donald Trump got 62. That's a net gain of 11.1 for the Democrats, a net loss of 10.4 for the Republicans, and that's a total net change of 21.5 points away from the Republicans and toward the Democrats. So now we could quickly go through the rest of these states, and unless otherwise noted, these shifts are all toward the Democrats. So let's go on to Alaska, and that shifted 13.5 points toward the left. Arizona, same direction by a huge 31.5. Arkansas, 10.5. California had a gigantic 42.7, Colorado 41.5, Connecticut 38.5, Delaware 39.3, Florida 40.8, Georgia cracked 50 points, 50.6. Hawaii even outdid Georgia with 54.4. Idaho, much smaller shift there, 7.4. Illinois, back up into the 30s, 35.4. Indiana, 16.8. Iowa, 8.9. Kansas, 23.5. Kentucky, small change there, only 2.7. Louisiana, 18.3. Maine, 32.1. And Maryland, that went 57.1. Massachusetts, 24.5. Michigan, 17.2. Minnesota, 12.6. Mississippi, 42.1. Missouri, 9.2. Montana, 3.7. Nebraska, 21.9. Nevada, 29.8. New Hampshire, 36.4. New Jersey, 40.7. New Mexico, 35.3. New York, 40.5. North Carolina, 39.3. North Dakota managed to shift back toward the Republicans by 7%. Ohio, back toward the Democrats by 13.4. Oklahoma as well by 16.6. Oregon, 26.3. Pennsylvania, 21.2. Rhode Island, an even 27. South Carolina, an even 31. South Dakota, that had the biggest shift toward the Republicans, and that shifted 17.5 back toward the right. A lot of that reason is probably because that was George McGovern's home state back in 1972. Tennessee had a blue shift of 14.7. Texas as well by 27.4. Utah by 20.8. Vermont had the biggest shift of all. That used to be a solid red state, but it shifted an extremely significant 61.6 away from the Republicans. Virginia, 47.8 toward the Democrats. Washington, 37.5 toward the Democrats. West Virginia went back toward the Republicans by 11.7. Wisconsin, 10.4 toward the Democrats. And the last state is Wyoming, and that went back toward the Republicans by 4.8. And we also have Washington, D.C. on here. That shifted 30.3 toward the Democrats. So if you want to help visualize this data, we can apply it all to a map. Here it is. Got the same basic shading. The darkest colors are 10 or more points. The lightest colors are under 5 points, 3 levels of shading. And I don't think there's a whole lot to say about these shifts. As I said at the beginning, you're going to see shifts like this anytime one of the elections has any kind of a landslide in it. This time, almost all of it is going to be toward the Democrats. There are a few states on here that somehow defied the trends. West Virginia, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming. A couple other states are lighter blue, but this is a massive wipeout for the Republicans. That's what you get sometimes. Somehow it was just an overwhelming night back in 1972. So many states you would never think of going toward the Republicans went hard toward the Republicans back then. It was a different time, it was a different era, and things can change over several decades. Of course, the candidates also matter, the issues at the time matter, sometimes third-party vote matters, although it didn't really have much of an effect back in 72. And some of these shifts are so massive, you could add another level onto this, because most of these are over 20-point shifts, plenty are even over 30 points. It is pretty astounding to see shifts like this. If you've seen my other videos, you've seen shifts in the other direction as well, where all the states got redder. This time they got bluer. So I'll leave it there for you to draw your own conclusions. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about any of the shifts in any of these states? What do you think about either of these two elections? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I will see you on the next video.